Hey everybody, Paint Nerd's here. Well, Paint Nerd. I'm Sans a second, who is currently doing Disney and Legoland and all that other fun stuff. Today's episode is actually a really simple one, and hopefully it'll be short. It's kind of right now. It's just about giving you a couple setup tips so you can make your painting easier. A lot of times when people paint, they have all these paints in front of them. They have all the brushes and all that, and you don't really need a master setup to start painting, especially if you're new to the hobby and you're just trying to get your feet firmly under you. Where all the other videos are exactly that. It's finding what you need, breaking the rules, So, in reality, when you actually sit down, there's a couple little methods that I'm going to share with you that a lot of painters use. Some of them do it subconsciously, some of it do it actively. So what you do is you got to make sure that you have a setup where you can have your models that you're painting, the paints you're going to use, the brushes you're going to need, and a spot for your water, a spot for your cleaner, and a spot for snacks, and a mod if you vape. Try not to smoke around your models. That's kind of a weird thing, and a lot of people don't know this, but nicotine will actually stick and dull out your paint. But amazingly enough, I vape around my models all the time, and they don't have that issue. But I have seen that issue happen with people who are actively painting. The nicotine does something to the paint, and it just doesn't really help. So the way I like to do is take your table, make sure you have your models. How if you're going to be painting on sprue, if you're going to be painting off sprue, if you're going to do a partial build, if you're going to do a full build, however you want to do it. So you have your models. Make sure you have the paint sets you're going to need. And when I say that, a lot of people, they'll put all of their paints on a little carrier or a little tray, and they have access to all of them. What I like to do is get an idea of what colors I'm going to be working with and have just those there. It saves on space, it saves on prep, and it saves on make time and use time. So like, say you're doing traditional Space Marines, and by traditional I mean just regular Space Marines, and we're going to go with the Ultramarines. It's simple enough. So you would have your McCrag blue, you would have your lighter blue that would be your edge highlights, you would have your browns like Mornfang brown and Rhinox hide, you would have your gold, and you would have your decals, and whatever color lenses that, if you're going to attempt to do the lenses on the helmet, you would have the color for that. Most people use red. Although I have seen green to great effect, which is pretty cool, so it makes it look like they have night vision going on. So you would just have those paints. You wouldn't have a tray, you wouldn't have, an entire rack of paints like I have behind me full of paint. You would just have the paints you're going to use for that model set. And the reason that is you would literally make enough paint to do as much of everything as possible before you go on to your next color. And not having 100 different colors in front of you is kind of a bonus, because I'm going to be using this blue, this brown, this light blue, this gold, this black. All those, you'd have those colors right there, and they're easy to find. They're right in front of you. They're easy to mix on the palette because they're right there. There's no, middle ground. You have everything set up. So I'm one of those people that when I see that paint is starting to build up around the collar of the brush, where the brush hairs actually lead up into the little finial, I call that the collar. And paint tends to clump up there, even if you're washing your brush as much as possible. So what I do is I actually have a brush cleaner or brush soap on my table, so I can clean the brush wash it in some water, clean towel. And then I can go into my next pigment, and I don't have to worry about any of the color up on that collar coming down into the mix. So that kind of eliminates a lot of space. I mean, you can use a little 4x4 table and not have to worry so much about... Please forgive my phone. Apparently it doesn't understand that it needs to be quiet. You could use a 4x4 table and still do masterful effects with your paint, and all you're doing is limiting the amount of space you need for those paint. And I mean, I have all my paints in a little cardboard box, and I have some in the rack, like right behind here inside that room. And I tend to only gravitate towards the paints I need and grab them. The brushes I need, grab those. And I always try to make sure my brushes are clean before I even start. And it's just for, cleanliness sake. It's also for space, getting everything where I need it to be. And a lot of people like to use silicone mats when they paint. And I tend to like them too, because it's great. It saves your table from having a huge mess on it. It saves you time, energy, and money. And some of those silicone mats, people double them as kind of like a wet palette. They put a little wet, towel down, and then they put some, wax paper down, and they mix their, paints on that. Now, when you're painting, you're going to find that the paint we use doesn't dry instantly. It's not like you put on a layer and it dries in 3 seconds. It doesn't. Depending on how thick you put it on, the paint can take anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes. So one of the tricks I use and a lot of other painters use, unless they're live painting, like my 4.5 hour live stream on the Painters Facebook page, that was 4.5 hours of me painting just 2 models. And they weren't small either. There's my R model with his little mimic, all that in there. I even made a glow-in-the-dark book. Got some really cool liquid in the cup. And, I gave him eyes. And I didn't do all of it all together. I mean, like, literally at 4.5 hours, I cut the stream because I needed to stretch. I needed to massage my hands. I really needed to, get my stuff down. And then as the day went on, I kept, working. And then I have my tar model, which I've still been working on a little bit. I still got a little bit of work to do on the tail. But I've been, painting and touching up and, all the cool little things that, you do as a painter, to make the effects what you're looking for. So when I gauge time, when I'm doing a live stream, I kind of look up at the clock. And I take myself a little snapshot in my mind of what time it was when I looked at the clock. And that lets me know how much time has passed between a specific layer in a specific area, and whether it's safe to touch, whether it's safe to paint over it, and whether it's safe to do any of the other things that I plan on doing. Another thing I use when I'm doing it privately is I'm a huge anime nut. I love sci-fi movies and TV shows. So what I'll do is I'll actually stream my anime or a TV show, and I'll use that as my timer. And the reason I love using anime for that is they have art cards where the commercial break would be. And so I know that if I have a 24-minute anime running, usually around the 11 and a half, 12-minute mark, I'll have an art card that tells me that that's where the commercials would start. And then I would get a second art card telling me when the commercials would be over. I mean, it's done in a couple seconds, but I know when I see that first art card, I'm about 11, 12 minutes in. And in 11 and 12 minutes, an entire layer of paint can be dry, and you can go on to your next effect. You can start your washes, and it's dry enough to the touch that you're not going to hurt anything. You're not going to get any fingerprints on it. Any paint that's on your hands, be easy to clean up. So music is another way to go, especially if you look at how much time that song takes, and you have your little player going. You can literally see, it's like a 3.5 minute song, and you're 2 minutes into it, and you just finished, a paint area. So you know that you're gonna have, that much time of paint dry before the next song. So you can actually take that time, and then when the next song starts, because while you're doing all that, while you're waiting, have a snack, massage your hands, drink some water, take some vitamins, drink a Red Bull, drink a Monster, drink 2 Monsters. I mean, who knows? You're probably doing some weird challenge. Always make time for bathroom breaks. I don't sit there and hold it, because when you try to hold back having to, pee or, drop a deuce, number 2, your body reacts in a weird way. Like, you start getting cramps in your stomach, and you're trying to paint, and your body's doing this whole thing. Relieve yourself. I mean, there's no crime in that. Keeping in mind what you're doing is you're literally trying to create an effect, and wow, my beard just sticking out, getting all burly, and I trimmed it too. That was the weird part. And this part right here, this every morning, it's just like, I'm some weird Viking troll that didn't sort his stuff out. My chair keeps sinking. God, I need a new chair. So yeah, keeping your space as neat as possible, having a little snack, having your drinks, having your water, and don't mix the two. Just don't. It ends badly. I've done it. I've even accidentally washed my paint off in my coffee cup. It's just keep in mind where all your stuff is, because you're like, if you're right dominant, you're gonna want to go to your right and swirl around and clean off your brush. But if you're not paying attention to the right side where you keep everything, you're gonna see your coffee cup, because your drink cup is usually closer to you. I don't know why that is. I think there's probably a psychological element to it, but your drink cups tend to be a little closer to you, and your water cup is usually farther away. So you're instinctively, if you're thirsty and you need to clean your brush, the wires get crossed, and you'll come over here and you'll rinse off your brush and your coffee or your soda or whatever. And I've done that and drinking my coffee, which, I mean, it's acrylic paint. It's not going to hurt me, and it's probably not going to hurt you. I'm not saying it's not toxic. I'm just saying that it's not toxic enough to cause detrimental effects. What I'm saying is you'll make those mistakes, and it's okay to make those mistakes. It's just, before you go painting, so you don't have coffee flavored, paint, just clean off your brush properly. So we covered just using the colors that you plan to use, making sure that your miniatures are in a paintable state in the way you're going to paint them. Manage your space. And, I mean, I even have a hard time with that. Managing my space is tough, because I have a lot of projects that I do, and I'm not the most gracious acceptor of help. Like, I love my sister and my wife. That, like, if they're over, if my sister's at the house, and she sees that I've made a mess, she'll try to clean it up and try to keep everything in kind of a, here's your Mashiva over here, so that way you can get back to it. But I'm usually only gone from my mess for about 5-10 minutes, because I'm either on a phone call, or I'm talking to a client, or I'm planning out my next move. And my sister's trying to get stuff done. My wife is trying to get stuff done. And my wife does the same thing. They do it in earnest, and they do it as a way to just help. And it doesn't always come off as help. It's more of like, So managing your own space is probably the most important thing you can do. Dedicate a space that is specifically for your painting, and make sure that all the stuff you use is out of the way of everybody else. I mean, you can own a 5-bedroom house, and it would be really weird to have your paintbrushes and some paints in the kitchen while you also have paints and stuff in a den or in a living room, because that's where your TV is, and that's what you're using to mark time. And find a dedicated space. And it really doesn't matter what else is in that space, as long as you know that the dedicated space you're painting with is where you paint. That's where your paints are going to be easily accessible. That's where your brushes are easily accessible. That's where all of your solutions and your paint soap and your brush soap is available. That's where your water cup's going to be. So that way you're not marring anything that you could use when company's over, but at the same time, the mess you create while you're doing your miniatures and painting whatever it is you're painting, even if it's not miniatures, isn't in the way. Because that stuff can literally get away from you really, really quick. So the maintenance of your space is important. How you're going to paint is important. And how much of it, you get, like, I have the time to literally sit and paint for 4.5 hours on a live stream solely because the save point gives me the opportunity to do so. It's not that they were, oh, well, we've got nothing better to do today, just do a 4-hour paint session. It had nothing to do with that. The 4-hour paint session was my choice. And it was because I did it for Justin and Jennifer, and I will jump through rings of fire for those two. They're great people. They're smart. They're funny. Troll Tooth Productions has been a big supporter of the Paint Nerds. I mean, even though you may not see it, but the camera I'm using was a gift to get started from Justin. A lot of the way we do things is literally Jennifer kind of, oh, you should try this. Or, oh, you know what? Instead of, doing this, why don't you just show all of it or as much of it as you can and tell everybody why? Because they're really big on making sure that everybody has as much information as possible. And that we kind of took that idea and ran with it. And it was a great idea. It was a great plan. And it's still a great plan. It's a beautiful plan. And making sure that you have the information is just as important as how we give it to you. And so Troll Tooth Productions is literally one of those, magical, truly magical groups that can help you get where you need to be. So, I mean, if you're watching this and you've never heard of Troll Tooth Productions before, look them up. You can book them for parties. You can buy their merch. They're great. And a lot of people don't know this, but at the save point, they actually have miniature versions of the statues I showed you, with cards that are basically character sheets for D&D. So you can actually use them for both good and bad parts of the campaign. And I think it's great. And they're only here at the save point, and they're just amazing. They're amazing resin miniatures that you can paint yourself. And the save point does a great job of really bringing in, all the communities, whether it be, the LGBTQ community, the painting community, the gaming community. It's there's so many lifestyles and, all these. There's a lot of communities where there's a lot of interconnect for painting and gaming and all that. And the save point is literally working their tails off to make sure that everybody feels comfortable and welcome here. And I think that's great. That's why, when I asked the owners if I could do my bit here and do painting here, they were like, oh yeah, sure, no problem. Just follow the rules. I'm like, cool. Let me do that. Let me follow them rules. Call back to the very first episode. So, we've talked about area prep. We've talked about, ease of use. We talked about just pulling your colors. Talked about space management. We talked about, the important people and that are part of the show that, you don't see. And we have other videos that talk about paints and brushes and palettes. And keep in mind, you don't have to spend hundreds of dollars. You really don't. Painting doesn't require that. It requires time, energy, and effort. If you have that and you want to try it, go nuts. It is what it is. I mean, either you're going to put a year into it, and within 6 months, I guarantee you, with a little bit of tweaking to things you already know how to do, you're going to blow my work out of the water. You know, you're just going to be like, oh, look at this thing I did. I'm like, you know, and I'll do that. I tend to gawk over people doing really cool work. I mean, even my daughter Jess, you know, she'll sit there and paint miniatures, and she'll just glop paint on things, and it's still amazing. You know, it's like I've never seen Space Marines painted in abstract before, but she pulled it off. You know, it's a talent. You can't teach that. She knows what colors worked well together. She knows how to make them stand out, and she just did her thing. And I couldn't be more proud of that. And I'm proud of everybody who's watched this, you know, these episodes and listened to us on, you know, podcasts. And I mean, if any of you taken the leap into actually painting, I'm proud of you. I'm genuinely proud. And I'm glad I could have helped in some small way to facilitate that. And it's not that I'm important. It's just I'm a small cog in that imagination machine, and I know what my job is, and it's to do the best work I can to show you, and it's to give you advice to let you know that what you're doing is perfectly okay. Maybe everything I tell you is just a way to help snap things together so you can get that stuff in. So, with that, we love every single one of you. None of this is possible without any one of you. And again, thank you to Chris and Sarah at the Save Point, my wife, my friends, Troll Tooth Productions, Justin and Jennifer, great people. You know, give them a holler. Let them know how they can help you. I mean, if there's something that they can do to help you, I mean, put money in their coffers, and you get really cool actors helping you make an event great, or, you know, a way just to show your family that, hey, this is a fun place to be. I mean, they're great for that. So until next time, this has been the Paint Nerds, and keep painting. Don't follow the rules. Later.